never seen anything like this before.
We are the future, Charles, not them.
We are talking X-Men, the original X-Men movie from the year 2000, way back when. Ahmed, how you feeling? How you doing? What'd you think about rewatching this movie?
Actually, Jeff, I watched almost every X-Men movie ever made to prepare for this episode because Deadpool 3 is coming out in July. And in watching the first X-Men movie, it really kind of sets the precedent of how they really were hoping they could have what they have now. Kind of like with Iron Man 2008, where they were really hoping that this would work out.
This movie, I thought, aged incredibly well. Like, for a movie that came out in 2000, filmed in 1999, which is right after the first Blade had come out, and The Matrix, which are like two movies you can see a lot of influence. As my dogs will tell you, they were not born back then, but they're big fans of X-Men. Anyway, a lot of influence from Blade, a lot of influence from that first Matrix movie. The casting is just some of the best casting in comic book movie history. These actors are still playing these roles to this day, Ahmed. Like, as we get ready for Deadpool and Wolverine, we have Hugh Jackman, who was cast 3 weeks into filming, which is insane. James Marsden as Cyclops, I thought was pretty good. And obviously, Professor X and Magneto, Ian McKellen, and Sir Patrick Stewart taking on those roles. Like, you couldn't ask for a better team of actors to take this on.
It literally is, they cast A-list actors because they really invested. And this is 8 years prior to them casting nobodies and has-beens, if it's fair to say. No shade to Robert Downey Jr. because we've seen how much he's grown since then. But we've seen where he's come from and how he's evolved. And so the fact that Hugh Jackman, who has since retired this character, rightfully so. I mean, he's played the hell out of it. To see him go, you know what?
Yeah.
I'll bring it back. Why not? It's like, how fortunate are we?
Seeing him interact with Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, which we did get in X-Men Origins Wolverine a little bit, besides them, sewing Deadpool's mouth shut in that movie. But we're not talking about that movie. Like, it really sets you up to be invested from the first 5 minutes of this movie, and that's Magneto's backstory, which is heartbreaking and ties into his comic book origin in World War II in the concentration camps. And just seeing that on screen, I thought was well done by Bryan Singer. And just everything after that is great. You follow Logan throughout the rest of this movie. You meet Rogue, who is essentially like the second lead of the movie, who I thought was very well played by Anna Paquin. And yeah, nothing but good things, nothing but great characters. The story's very simple when it comes to a comic book movie. And there's big set pieces, which I love. The Statue of Liberty is one. Any scenes that really stood out to you, Ahmed?
When you talked about the opening of that movie where they tell Magneto's backstory, it sort of sets the precedent of how movies like this have crafted our generation. Jeff, you and I are not that far apart in age. I know I'm younger than you, but not by much. We have come to a point in our lives where we can sort of empathize with traditionally described as villains, where we're able to understand where Magneto is coming from. We don't have to agree with him, but it's just the fact that, like, we can empathize, we can understand. I thought that in and of itself was a great scene, but every scene between him and Patrick Stewart, where they're talking as Charles and
Eric, yeah,
God,
Eric.
what is his real name? Eric. Charles and Eric's name. Professor X and Magneto, when they're talking, Professor X still thinks he's, capable of redemption. Meanwhile, Magneto is just like, I don't need your fucking redemption. And I think that's just beautiful. Of course, we've seen X-Men Days of Future Past. Jeff, I don't know about you, but I watched every X-Men movie, at least almost every X-Men movie ever made to prepare for this talk and to prepare for Deadpool and Wolverine. But one thing I noticed is just they really put in so much effort into how the story of redemption, story of good versus evil. And what you find with simple storytelling with these movies is that it's not always black and white. How does somebody become evil? And the fact that, you know, and I know this is jumping ahead, I know this is off topic, but the fact that people are so up in arms about X-Men 97 and how, oh, they're so woke and all that. It's like X-Men
Yes.
has always been a symbolism for difference, for people being different. It's like, no, I'm not a mutant. I'm not a freak. I'm just
Yeah,
built
and
different.
Stan Lee, even in interviews when he created the X-Men, said that the X-Men were an analogy to civil rights and gay rights and everything that was going on in the 60s when these characters were created. And you can definitely see that here. There's a lot of political, not even undertones here. The politics are right in your face, and that's with the Senator Kelly character really puts that in the forefront. But yeah, this movie does a good job of portraying a group of people that just want to be accepted, and uh, having them do that by protecting the people that are against them in a way. It is a very, very intriguing backstory that has obviously lived on for 60 years now, and it's going to continue on in the future. Like X-Men 97 is a good example of that. We've have gone a little back to the drawing board, but they're introducing new themes, especially through the character of Morph, who is non-binary in that show. You have a lot of other topics that they explore in there. And I just think the X-Men are just some of the smartest Marvel characters ever created. Uh, Definitely up there with like Spider-Man, but like this is more of like the thinking man's Marvel, I would say.
That's fair because I didn't watch any of the X-Men movies as a child because I just was like, this seems too complicated. And even X-Men in general didn't grab my attention as much as Spider-Man did. And it wasn't until I got a little older that Deadpool was the introduction to that. So the fact that we're seeing Deadpool as like the introduction to X-Men, I think is kind of fitting in a way. And it's like they made the movie for viewers like me, where if you really didn't get X-Men in the beginning, maybe we'll spoon feed the shit to you now, which is what they're doing. To me, at least, they're spoon feeding why you needed to appreciate the X-Men movies. And, you know, reading this book by all these different authors, it's amazing because it's like all these backroom deals with business people. And by the way, these are not sponsors of us. We need to
Ahmed, they
get
have
them to
their own
sponsor
podcast.
us.
We've been over this
So
before. Um,
I know we've been over this. You need to sponsor us. God damn it. I'm giving you guys free publicity and I'm hopped up on meds, but I did this on sober too. Anyway, what's my point? The fact of the matter is, you had backroom deals, but you had writers to make it flow so perfectly, and you had actors that just pieced it together. And I wish people could kind of like give X-Men and these other movies the flowers it deserves instead of saying that superhero movie genres are classified as others.
And like speaking of the history of this movie, which I did read in the MCU book by Joanna Robinson and Dave Gonzalez and the other author who I'm blanking on right now, but
The other authors who
Also
haven't subscribed
that
to us,
um
yes.
like it was a road to get here. Like it was definitely a road to get to an X-Men movie. The rights for Marvel were all over the place, especially in the 90s. Marvel was going through a bankruptcy and they were selling off the movie rights to different studios to just stay afloat. This movie originally was going to be produced by James Cameron, directed by Catherine Bigelow, who directed Zero Dark 30. And that movie died because James Cameron pivoted to trying to direct a Spider-Man movie that would have been starring Leonardo DiCaprio. So there is like a butterfly effect of events that led to this movie to happen. Um, and the fact that we got a live action movie of any Marvel property is honestly a win, a huge win in the history of cinema because those rights were everywhere. Like you had a Fantastic Four movie that was never released in the 90s, and they only made that movie to keep the rights. You had a horrible Captain America movie, you had a Punisher movie starring Dolph Lundgren. This movie essentially is a miracle that it exists right now. And I'm so happy it does because it really changed the winds of how we think about superhero movies. And honestly, um, I think it really stands the test of time. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, Ahmed, um, let's talk about where you think this ranks in the history of comic book movies, going back from Christopher Reeve Superman to Deadpool 3, what we're about to see in a few months.
I think it definitely deserves a Hall of Fame rating. Um, but I'm gonna be biased just because I just saw Logan earlier today for the second time, and it took me a long time to see Logan, despite all the spoilers and everything that was out there. I would still give X-Men, the very first 2000 film, a Hall of Fame, but I would give Logan
Oh,
the
yes, and
GOAT rating.
that is the episode we're going to dive into a little closer to Deadpool and Wolverine. I do think Logan is the best X-Men movie ever made. This movie is definitely a Hall of Fame, and X2, which is fantastic as well, is also probably a Hall of Fame movie. And then, and only then, Ahmed, we start going off the rails, starting with X Men: The Last Stand, and we start getting convoluted, and we're bringing in different actors for different eras of these characters and all that stuff. But like, I do love that they're bringing back some of these characters now. Like, uh, I think we'll probably see Jean Grey in the new movie. Beast with Kelsey Grammer is already coming back from this series. Patrick Stewart already popped up in Multiverse of Madness, but stop killing Professor X because it happens every single time.
Dude, I only wanted to see Multiverse of Madness because I saw that, and then I liked the movie, but I was like, Jesus Christ! I sat through 2.5 hours only to see him die just
Yeah.
like that. But what a world we live in, Jeff, where we have these, you know, amazing storytelling abilities. We have these people that can tell these stories in a way that it's so effortless.
This movie, I really got no gripes with. I thought it aged great. I thought it looks great. Makes me want to watch the rest of the series, minus maybe the last two. Uh, but yeah, anything else you want to add about X Men or any of the movies or anything else we're seeing before we start heading towards Deadpool 3?
I would say just pay the writers what they're asking for, pay the actors what they're asking for, and just give the people what they deserve. The fact that we're gonna, and maybe this is a spoiler, but this is what I've heard in the rumors, that we're gonna get to see a glimpse of Daniel Radcliffe as a alternate or variant of Wolverine. That's great. We always have these, oh, I think X, Y, and Z could play Wolverine. We even say, oh, who could play a good Iron Man? Tom Cruise, blah 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 blah. Nah, it's got to be Robert Downey Jr. And if they could bring back Hugh Jackman, maybe they could bring back Tom Cruise. Maybe they could bring back Robert Downey
Tom
Jr.
Cruise, maybe he comes in as superior Iron Man, which we thought was going to happen in Multiverse of Madness. Uh, there's a whole realm of possibilities. Nostalgia is in. We got Toby back as Spider-Man. Anything can happen. But yeah, anything.
Anything could happen. Just pay the actors what
Pay them. They're
they
worth it.
want.
Well, Ahmed, our next movie is going to be Monkey Man, a movie we were originally supposed to review tonight, but the power went out in my theater and we had to push it to next weekend. But from the 85% of that movie I saw, I can tell you that movie is great and we're going to have a good time with that too. But
Monkey
yes.
Man! Hey
Yes,
Arnold
deep
reference.
cuts for the 90s kids. But yeah, this has been Box Office Quarterbacks. I'm Jeff. That's Ahmed. We'll talk to you guys very, very soon.